I say this with seriousness and respect, but your department is out of control. You are spending like you don't have a budget. You're on the verge of...
Putin's Russia ties what many Russians consider their finest moment, victory over Germany, to today's confrontation with the West.
Can we please stop using this phrase, facing starvation? Children aren't facing starvation in Gaza, they are starving.
Yeah.
Let's get that clear. So.
Working to find those responsible for killing a 23-year-old mother on the morning of Mother's Day.
And WJZ live in Southwest Baltimore at 5:30 tonight. Stefan Dingle joining us now with what we're learning about yet another tragic shooting. Stefan.
Hey there, Rick. Good evening to you. Nikki, good evening to you as well. That 23-year-old identified as Tanaya Gray. And not only was she a mother, she was celebrating her 23rd birthday yesterday, leaving her family in pain and her neighbors confused about this shooting that disrupted their otherwise quiet community.
It's unnormal for things like this to happen so close to where I live. So
all was calm on Monday along Mountwood Road in Southwest Baltimore, where more than 24 hours prior, gunfire disrupted the otherwise quiet neighborhood.
A young lady got shot at. Males in a dog SUV, possibly gray, took off towards Mountwood and Wildwood Parkway. 3 or 4 shots 5 minutes ago. Female caller.
23-year-old Tanaya Gray was celebrating her birthday and Mother's Day the morning she was killed. A woman I spoke to who lives in these apartments here says she heard the shots ring out, and when she looked out of her window, she noticed a car had crashed into the bumper of her parked car with the victim still inside. Police haven't given many details on what led up to the shooting that happened around the corner from where Tanaya Gray was found alone in the backseat of the white Acura.
We have a number 1 female victim. She's not responsive right now. She called the victim then. White Acura TLX.
I have nephews and nieces that play outside willing after school, so it's like, okay, now do I keep my babies in the house? Do I sit outside with them? Do I move? Should I have cameras? Because it's unlikely for this to happen. It's a friendly neighborhood.
On Monday, detectives canvassed the scene and interviewed potential witnesses to piece together a motive as to why this young mother was shot and killed on her birthday. Now, I did speak with several people in the neighborhood who did not want to talk to me on camera, and they do tell me that Tanaya Gray was the mother of a young daughter. If you know anything about what happened on Sunday morning, you're asked to call police or Metro
New York City with the first day of testimony in Sean Diddy Combs' federal sex crimes trial. After seating a jury of 8 men and 4 women, the prosecution delivered its opening statement, and they came out swinging. Prosecutor Emily Johnson said the public knew Diddy as a larger-than-life business mogul. Behind the scenes, he was forcing women into sex, using violence and drugs to keep them in line. She said Combs had an inner circle that helped him commit sex crimes, drug crimes, other crimes, things like arson and kidnapping. And then came the graphic details from what we now know are called the freak-offs, where Diddy allegedly recorded sexual encounters that he'd arranged between paid escorts and his alleged victims, including his former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. Now, the feds say Diddy once forced an escort to urinate on Cassie. That came out in court today. When it was the defense's turn, they didn't deny Diddy's temper. They said, yes, he can be violent. They admitted that. Remember, that's not what he's on trial for. They said, yes, he's got anger issues, and his actions might warrant domestic violence charges. It was clever that they said that. But trafficking and racketeering, again, that's what the federal case is about. The defense says those don't apply. And all that freak-off sex, according to the defense, they say it was consensual. They said that Diddy's love of baby oil, and this was actually a quote, They said the love of baby oil was not a federal crime. Cassie Ventura did not take the stand today. She is expected to be there tomorrow, and she better soon. This is another very interesting part of all of this. She is about to give birth to her third child any minute now, and she's about to get on the witness stand, about to have a baby. Another twist. Two witnesses were called today, including a former security officer at the hotel, where Diddy is seen on video attacking Ventura brutally. You remember that video back in 2016. The prosecutors played the video. The witness testified that Diddy tried to pay him off with a giant wad of cash. The day's second witness was a male escort. This is where it really got very juicy, who says that he was paid by Diddy numerous times to have sex with Cassie while Diddy sat there in the corner masturbating and watched.
Today on 10th May at the time of our day. Alhamdulillah. Nare Allah.
Eliminamos vários ministérios da máquina pública. E ao mesmo tempo, nós não vamos parar por aí. Já estão encomendados. Já estão encomendados estudos para eliminar. Chega, é muito. Já estão.
I say this with seriousness and respect, but your department is out of control. You are spending like you don't have a budget. You're on the verge of running out of money for the fiscal year. You are illegally refusing to spend funds that have been authorized by this Congress and appropriated by this committee. You are ignoring the immigration laws of this nation, implementing a brand new immigration system that you have invented that has little relation to the statutes that you are required, that you are commanded to follow, as spelled out in your oath of office. You are routinely violating the rights of immigrants who may not be citizens, but whether you like it or not, they have constitutional and statutory rights when they reside in the United States. Your agency acts as if laws don't matter, as if the election gave you some mandate to violate the Constitution and the laws passed by this Congress. It did not give you that mandate. You act as if your disagreement with the law, or even the public's disagreement with the law, is relevant and gives you the ability to create your own law. It does not give you that ability. Let's start with your spending. You are on track to trigger the Anti-Deficiency Act. That means you are going to spend more money than you have been allocated by Congress. This is a rare occurrence, and it is wildly illegal. Your agency will be broke by July, over 2 months before the end of the fiscal year. You may not think that Congress has provided enough money to ICE, but the Constitution and the federal law does not allow you to spend more money than you have been given, or to invent money. And this obsession with spending at the border, as the chairwoman mentioned, has left the country unprotected elsewhere. The security threats to the United States are higher, not lower, than when before Trump came to office. To fund the border, you have illegally gutted spending for cybersecurity. As we speak, Russian and Chinese hackers are having a field day attacking our nation. You've withdrawn funds for disaster prevention. Storms are going to kill more people in this country because of your illegal withholding of these funds. Your myopia about the border, fueled by President Trump's prejudice against people who speak a different language, has shattered many of this country's most important defenses. Now let's talk about the impoundments. When Congress appropriates funds for a specific purpose, the administration has no discretion as to whether to spend or not spend that money unless you go through a very specific process with this committee. Let me give you two of many instances of this illegal impoundment. The first is the Shelter and Services Program. Senator Britt may want to zero that account out, but that account is funded, and it was funded in a bipartisan way. You don't like the program. Your policy is to treat migrants badly. I think that's abhorrent, but it doesn't matter that you don't like the program. You cannot cancel spending in this program, and you cannot use the funds as you have to fund other things, like ICE. You have also canceled citizenship and integration grants, which help lawful permanent residents become citizens, helping them take the citizenship test. I know your goal is to try to make life as hard as possible for immigrants, but that goal is not broadly shared by the American public. That's why Congress, in a bipartisan way, for decades, has funded this program to help immigrants in this country become citizens.
Good evening. Pakistan has fired missiles into India, a major escalation in tensions in the region. The retaliatory strikes forcing Australian and other international cricketers to flee the area. The conflict tonight at the worst level in the past 3 decades. Fears now it's on the brink of all-out war.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today on 10th.
After days of drone warfare and decades of hostilities, a decisive escalation. Pakistan firing missiles into India and rallying the national body responsible for its nuclear assets. The Pakistani military has labelled this a counter-offensive, accusing India of shelling 3 of its air bases, including this one, 10 kilometres from the capital, Islamabad. Australian and other international cricketers departing that very same airbase just hours before. India has not responded to those claims, but its army has called the Pakistani strikes a blatant attempt to violate India's sovereignty and endanger civilians, and it's claimed to destroy some of its launch pads in Kashmir.
Missiles that has been launched by India is part of a larger sinister plan to push the region into havoc.
These provocative and escalatory actions, this is a new low, even for Pakistan.
Conflicting accounts and deliberate misinformation make it difficult to establish the facts, but one consensus: this is a concerning development between 2 nuclear-armed nations.
The war has already begun.
In the early morning, there were multiple explosions along the line of control.
Even death won't give you a free pass from justice. Bondi says the FBI is reviewing thousands of pieces of evidence related to the Epstein files.
There are tens of thousands of videos of Epstein with or child, and there are hundreds of victims, and no one victim will ever get released. It's just the volume, and that's what they're going through right now. The FBI is diligently going through that.
Outkick.com founder Clay Travis. All right, Clay, so we always knew they seized the servers, the laptops, the computers, the phones. They've had it for years. And we expected them to review it because it's not just Epstein teenagers, it's Epstein and his compatriots doing God knows what to God knows who. Why is this taking so long?
I think if you take Attorney General Pam Bondi at her word, who still is relatively new in office, it would probably be because there's so many minors involved and they want to try and figure out who those minors are. Now, I've always said that it didn't strike me as very likely that there wasn't something going on here from an intelligence perspective, where this is my theory. Epstein was potentially working for a foreign intelligence agency, maybe also for American intelligence agencies, getting compromising material on so many different people in positions of prominence. That's still the thing that makes the most sense to me. And I know everybody has theories on it, Jesse, but come on. In a proof wing of a New York City, a place to be held, the cameras aren't working, everybody goes to sleep. This entire case stinks to the high heavens. And I think what it represents more than anything else is just a loss of trust in people of positions of power, And we need as much of this information out as soon and as rapidly and as honestly as can possibly.
Well, what happens if nothing ever comes out? What happens if there's no more arrests? I mean, Epstein's dead, you can't arrest him. I mean, are people going to be satisfied with that?
No, I don't think so. And I think the reality is a lot of people will believe that people in positions of power were protected, that there's a different standard of justice for the rich and powerful than there is for everyone else in America. And so I think that's why we need sort of a full release, no more kind of hiding the ball respectively in the way that this story is covered. Let's get the full fruition of the information out there while protecting, which I think is what's going on here right now, while protecting the privacy of a lot of innocent victims that were taken advantage of by Epstein and his colleagues.
And on display today, what Moscow considers a new world order.
Today we're seeing a new, more just world order take shape. And the meaning behind the United Nations is important as ever. We must strengthen its coordinating role, making it central in global affairs, achieving and maintaining the principles and standards enshrined in its UN Charter in all their interrelatedness.
But it's, the world order is changing. Putin is on the back foot at the moment. We should be under no illusion about that. And it wouldn't surprise me if he had his fingers in the pie and was helping to stir India and Pakistan, because if he can get anything to take the world's eyes away from what's going on inside Ukraine, he will try that. And this is something that we have to be careful of. Middle East next.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you're right, actually. And just looking at Sudan and how that's a proxy war with various entities stirring things up and selling weaponry. We live in dangerous times, that's for sure. Philip Ingram, thank you ever so much. I'll get your thoughts very quickly before we go to break. I don't know where you were at on your geopolitics, but one thing that is clear to me, you've got the Crinklies, as they're called, which is basically the BRICS group of nations enhanced, which is China, Russia, India, North Korea. Well, no more like China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and India sort of plays both sides. I never understand how Iran fits into all of this, because, Russia has its own issue with Islamism.
It does.
And then Iran's there sort of stirring the pot.
It's about being the disruptor, isn't it?
That's the schism, I think, that we need to make happen. So break up the cozy relationship between Russia and Iran and make them realise that they actually hate each other.
Doctors are talking about babies having their eyesight impaired, children being
I know,
operated
we've been seeing images of this with their ribs showing thin, starving, malnourished, yet just the other side of the border, there are literally truckloads of food, just a matter of, a few hundred meters away.
There are hundreds of tons of food in vehicles that UNRWA could take in, rotting on the other side of the Rafah crossing, kilometre after kilometre. Trucks which are full of food, have been paid for, the trucks are being rented, the international community is paying for this food that is rotting in trucks when there are people, children, who are starving to death. And can we please stop using this phrase, facing starvation? Children aren't facing starvation in Gaza, they are starving.
Yeah.
Let's get that clear. So, that is what the world is allowing.
Can we please stop using this phrase, facing starvation? Children aren't facing starvation in Gaza, they are starving. Yeah. Let's get that clear.
So, can somebody tell me what the is this? And I'm not using no app. I am on County Road 2 in between State Avenue and K32. And I have never seen anything like that in my life. And it appears that little black stuff is falling down the center of it. That is just weird. And then just to let you all know, I'm not kidding here, this is real. Sorry, that's my phone doing that because it's a piece of crap Motorola. But just so you can see, it's me, and I'm live, and it's starting to dissipate. Look at that. Tell me that is not freaking weird. I have no idea. I've been recording it. It was a dark black circle and now it's dissipating. I mean, it looks like somebody blew a big old smoke ring.
It looks like the smoke. My first thought back in the distance was, is it a congregation of birds?
Yeah, that's what I thought. But then, because it looked like everything was falling through the center, but now it's just like totally dissipating. But I ain't never seen nothing like that in my life. I had to pull over and record it. So, hey, just so knows, I'm legit. Somebody pulled over and talked to me. I'm not talking about.
Now let's talk about why encounters at the southern border are down so much. This is clearly going to be your primary talking point today. You will tell us that it represents a success. But the primary reason why encounters are down is because you are brazenly violating the law every hour of every day. You are refusing to allow people showing up at the southern border to apply for asylum. I acknowledge that you don't believe that people should be able to apply for asylum, but you don't get to choose that. The White House doesn't get to choose that. The law requires you to process people who are showing up at the border and who claim asylum. Why? Because our asylum law is a bipartisan commitment, an effort to correct for our nation's unconscionable decision to deny entry to Jews to this country who were being hunted and killed by the Nazis. Our nation, Republicans and Democrats, decided, wrote it into law, that we would not repeat that horror ever again, and thus we would allow for people who were fleeing terror and torture to come here, arrive at the border, and make a case for asylum. Finally, let's talk about these disappearances. In an autocratic society, people who the regime does not like, or people who are protesting the regime, they are just often picked up off the street, spirited away, sometimes to open-ended detention, sometimes they're never seen again. What you are doing, both the individuals who have legal rights to stay here, like Kilmar Abrego Garcia, or students who are just protesting Trump's policies, is immoral. And to follow the theme, it is illegal. You have no right to deport a student visa holder with no due process, simply because they have spoken in a way that offends the president. You can't remove migrants who a court has given humanitarian protection from removal. Now, reports suggest that you are planning to remove immigrants with no due process and send them to prisons in Libya. Libya is in the middle of a civil war. It is subject to a level 4 travel advisory, meaning we tell American citizens never to travel to Libya. We don't have an embassy there because it is not safe for our diplomats. Sending migrants with pending asylum claims into a war zone just because it's cruel is so deeply disturbing. Listen, I understand that my Republican colleagues on this committee don't view the policy the way that I do. My Republican colleagues don't share my level of concern for the way that this administration treats immigrants. That's fine. But what I don't understand is why we don't have consensus in the Senate and on this committee on the decision by this administration to impound the spending that we have decided together to allocate in defense of this nation. We as an appropriations committee, we work interminable hours to write and pass a budget. This budget is really hard to write and pass. And so we make ourselves irrelevant when we allow the administration to ignore what we have decided. And then when we look the other way, when the administration rounds up immigrants who are here illegally and have committed no offenses worthy of detainment, we also do potential irreversible damage to the Constitution. These should not be partisan concerns, destroying the power of Congress, eroding individuals' constitutional rights. This should matter to both parties.
These should not be partisan concerns, destroying the power of Congress, eroding individuals' constitutional rights. This should matter to both parties.
But we have to, globalism is another one of those isms. It's another one of those ideologies. And it's one that holds that the world's nations and peoples should be closely connected through economic, political, and cultural values. In other words, one world government, one world economy, one world religion. And they should all be working in cooperation, creating a system where national borders matter less and international collaboration is prioritized. So if you want to try to understand some of the things that are going on in our own country over the last few years, why were the borders left wide open and people encouraged to come in? It was because people who were writing the policy had a globalist view. They thought the answer to the problems in the world is to eliminate national identities and national borders, and that everybody be able to freely move around the earth and change basically the social and political and economic dynamics of society and of the world. And then when you talk about people we name like George Soros, that's literally George Soros' ideology, and that's why he's spending millions upon billions of dollars to have the open Borders Society and all of the other NGOs that run off of that, because he believes that's the answer to what's wrong with the world. He believes nations are the source of war. But saying all of that, it really comes down to this idea that there's going to come in Daniel and Revelation this last final man-made global empire, if you will. And we're told very clearly, here in chapter 18, for example, that he will reign over the kings of the earth. Kings is this word Basileo in the Greek literally just means a ruler, a guy who's in charge. It can be a president, a prime minister. We just often translate it as a king, but that wasn't really necessarily a biblical term, king. In fact, the Romans called it rex. Basileus was the term they gave to the guy who was in charge of the Greek world, and it basically speaks about whoever is the ruling, governing seat.
Disturbing TikTok trend putting kids in danger in classrooms across multiple states. A growing number of videos posted to TikTok and other platforms in recent days, appearing to show kids sticking school supplies like pencils and paper clips in their Chromebooks, sparking electrical fires and releasing toxic smoke. One incident at Connecticut's Newington High School forcing an evacuation.
It became clear that the damage was done intentionally, that it wasn't a malfunctioning Chromebook, but rather a student had intentionally done things to it that caused it to smoke and eventually melt.
Thankfully, no one at the school was injured, but the town's fire marshal, DJ Zordan, telling us it's not just the fire that poses a threat. What is the potential danger these students might be putting themselves and others in?
There is a risk of electrocution, depending on what you're inserting into these laptops. If there's a fire, it's producing toxic smoke. We don't want people breathing that stuff. The lithium batteries are volatile, so if it does explode, there's a potential that you're going to injure people around you.
At least 2 other schools in the state also reporting Chromebook fires.
The hallways filling with smoke. We went in and ended up finding a laptop in a classroom that was pretty much out but on fire at one point.
Great. Yeah.
The trend popping up in classrooms from coast to coast. Last October, a school district in Washington posting online saying a student started a Chromebook fire with a pen. There's no one clear reason why students are doing this. One of the videos simply reading, quote, anything but work. Zordan says parents have to educate their children on the dangers involved.
$1 billion commercial deals with Amazon, Oracle, AMD, they're all here. Uber, Qualcomm, Johnson & Johnson, and many, many more. So I want to congratulate everybody, so many great business executives, many of you, most of you I know, and they're coming in, about a month ago. They weren't that happy when they saw me, and now they're saying, sir, you're doing a great job, thank you very much. Amazing what rising market will do. Oh, it's going to get a lot higher. In fact, I told people 5 weeks ago, it's a great time to buy. I got criticized for that. Now they don't criticize me anymore. People should have listened. But it's going to go a lot higher. You see, we've never had anything like this happen. It's an explosion of investment and jobs, and great companies are coming in. Never seen anything like it. There's no better place to make a future or make a fortune, do anything, frankly, than what we have in the United States of America under a certain president, Donald J. Trump. I have the right attitude. I have the same attitude that the people in the front row, second row, third row have. As you get back, perhaps they start to wane a little bit in terms of their view. But they understand, and we're doing what a lot of smart people would do. And we're not necessarily being politically correct.
Person with a brain and a beating heart.
Yes, sir.
Did Jeffrey Epstein hang himself, or did somebody kill him?
Senator, I believe he hung himself in a cell in the Metropolitan Detention Center.
Are you going to release all the information about that?
Senator, we are working through that right now with the Department of Justice.
When you think you'll have it done, Cash?
I think in the near future, sir.
Like before I die?
Senator, we've been working on that, and we're doing it in a way that protects victims and also doesn't put out into the ether information that is irrelevant for production of the public, such as CSAM.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Reid.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Fly into Jeffrey Epstein's ranch in Albuquerque. Do you know he has
Did he have a ranch there?
Not only does he have a ranch there, but he's got a mile away, he actually owns a Western world. It's like Westworld. Yeah, and
dude, 60
like Spawn
Ranch?
the elites, that's where they hang out. Jeffrey Epstein's Western town.
In Albuquerque?
In Albuquerque.
60 Minutes had a piece
about
how the suicide is fake. 60 minutes. Did you see in his little cell? There's 10 different freaking jumpsuits. Yeah, there's a cord. There's a pen. Yeah. It's nuts. And his brother's the one who hired this outside lawyer. And the lawyer's like, I know it looks like I'm here to be like, oh no, he didn't. I'm telling you, look at all this stuff. Here's the Michael Baden guy, that guy from the HBO autopsy series. I mean, that guy has done thousands of autopsies, and he's a real expert. He's like, I've never seen anyone who hung themselves with injuries like this, especially where the mark's at.
Who knows if that's all just a distraction to get people arguing, make it so obvious that it wasn't a suicide. It's so obvious. Let's release it, make it so obvious. Meanwhile, he's still alive, and everyone's trying to figure out how he died, and all they care about is that he's dead.
You think he's alive?
I think he's dead.
Back to the Future envisioned flying cars in 2015. And while they were wrong on that particular venture, they were only really off by a decade.
Today, we may not be traveling through time, but a flying car may not be such a stretch anymore. Regina Gonzalez is live to show us a demonstration that's bringing the future to the present. Hey, good morning again.
Hello, everyone. That's right. We are hanging out in downtown Tampa, where Special Operations Forces Week is underway. And obviously, that comes with a lot of really cool demonstrations. But one site that has specifically been quite the spectacle is being called what's dubbed a flying car. We're actually about to get a little demonstration ourselves here in just a minute. This aircraft vehicle, you can technically call it both, was created by a company called Pivotal. And right now, the CEO, Ken Karklin, is joining us right now. Ken, right off the bat, can you tell us what this is?
Well, we call it a electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft.
An eVTOL.
An eVTOL, that's right. And its capacity is one person, and it is robust, and it takes off like a helicopter, cruises like an airplane, and then you can land again just like a helicopter. It's in the ultralight category. This one is, built deliberately, engineered for very, very low mass to fit into that category. And it's something that you can learn how to fly in a couple of weeks and actually take one home to go fly in unrestricted airspace.
I think that's what's so incredible to me is that you don't need a pilot's license in order to fly it. How is that?
Well, the ultralight category does actually permit non-certificated pilots to fly an aircraft. Oh, here he goes.
Oh, here we go.
He's up and he's cruising by pretty quiet, isn't it?
Really not that loud.
So when he's in cruise flight, that forward flight, at 200 feet, which is more typical cruising altitude, you might not actually hear it at all. It's very low noise. When he's in hover, it makes a little bit more noise, but even then, it's pretty quiet. And off he goes. He's going to make another turn, probably come back and see us in a second. This aircraft has been in development for 13 years. And the company was actually started in Canada quite a while ago. It moved to the Bay Area after it got, the San Francisco Bay Area, after it got some attention from some key investors. And it has had multiple generations of development and thousands of flights, many of them unmanned. And we've moved to manned flight as a predominant mode of testing flight right now. We're actually launching a production version of it in the December timeframe.
Wow. Okay, I have to ask, what does one of these go for?
The civilian version, which has civilian hardware on it, it starts at a price of about $190,000 today. That once we're in full production, that pricing may move a little bit, but we're actually cultivating opportunities in the defense space and in the public service.
Tonight, in an unprecedented move never before seen in U.S. history, President Donald Trump is poised to accept a Boeing 747 luxury jet as a gift from the country of Qatar, or Qatar that is. The legally questionable gift would fly in the face of decades of rules accepting large gifts from foreign countries. The Trump administration would reportedly then retrofit $400 million jet to be used as Air Force One for the remainder of the president's second term. Afterwards, the plane would then be donated to the Trump Presidential Library Foundation, which would allow President Trump to continue using it after leaving office. The White House press secretary says that any gift given by a foreign government is always accepted in full compliance of the law.
Because we have to pay a lot of stuff, and I've been helping her out because she doesn't know English, and it's just a lot of weight on us both. My little sister, well, she can't help a lot because she's only 9.
Dalton police say they pulled over 19-year-old Jimena Arias Cristobal for making an improper turn at this traffic light, and they discovered she was driving without a proper license.
And then Monday, when she was arrested, we were all just blindsided.
Just 2 weeks ago, Arias Cristobal's family tells us that they went through a similar situation with her father. They tell us that he was exceeding the speed limit here in Tunnel Hill, and when he got pulled over during a traffic stop. And during that traffic stop, he did not have a driver's license.
When my dad left, well, it was only her and my older sister to help out with the family, and now that they took her away, it's only her.
Arias Cristobal and her father are now both at the Stewart Detention Facility near Columbus. She and her parents came from Mexico City back in 2010.
They came as illegal people. They came like other people to make a better future for my little sister. For my older sister when she was 4. And they came in with no papers or anything to be here.
They tell us her dad tried to secure a work visa, but had difficulty.
My dad has his own company, and they called a lawyer to see if they could get a job permit or a visa, and they said that they hadn't hit that status to get one yet.
Arias Cristobal was 4 years old at the time. Her family says the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA program, stopped accepting new applications before she was eligible.
You may recall that on the day he was sworn in president, Trump signed an executive order, effectively stopping any refugees from being allowed to come and resettle in the United States. Now, there's an act passed by Congress called the Refugee Act, which allows for as many as 125,000 refugees in this fiscal year, people who can prove they're being persecuted or fear persecution because of race or religion or political beliefs. And nowhere near that number has been allowed in by the time Mr. Trump took office and shut it all down. But just a few weeks later, President Trump announced that he was making an exception, and not only that, he would expedite the processing of refugee claims by one group of people from Africa. Now, you might think it's some women and children who've been maybe sexually assaulted in the conflict in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, a place that's seen fighting for decades. In this program, we reported on the violence that plighted people there in a series of programs in 2006.
As refugees, I want to ask you about South African refugees. Dozens of Afrikaners who claim discrimination in their home country are heading to the United States, where our administration is going to welcome them as refugees. Now, this comes as you've halted virtually all refugee missions for people fleeing famine and war from countries like Sudan and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Why are you creating an expedited path into the country for hunters but not others?
Because they're being killed, and we don't want to see people be killed. Now, South Africa leadership is coming to see me, I understand, sometime next week. But it's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about. But it's a terrible thing that's taking place, and farmers are being killed. They happen to be white, but whether they're white or black makes no difference to me. But white farmers are being brutally killed, and their land is being confiscated in South Africa. And the newspapers and the media, television media, doesn't even talk about it. If it were the other way around, they'd talk about it. That would be the only story they'd talk about. And I don't care who they are. I don't care about their race, their color. I don't care about their height, their weight. I don't care about anything. I just know that what's happening is terrible. I have people that live in South Africa. They say it's a terrible situation taking place. So we've essentially extended citizenship to those people.
When Donald Trump became president, America witnessed a rise in white nationalism, in hate crimes, and in divisive conspiracy theories. But a lot of people thought that was a new phenomenon, that it was somehow reactionary behavior to Donald Trump's rhetoric and ideology. The fact is, that isn't true. The fact is, it's quite the opposite. You see, Donald Trump was put into office by white nationalism, by divisive conspiracy theories, and by a long history of white supremacy in this country. Conspiracies of war against white America, conspiracies of the government attacking white Christian America. These conspiracies have existed in white communities across America for decades. Donald Trump simply provided legitimacy to these conspiracies by using key and designated language in his campaign that caused white America to circle in a sharp frenzy and cast their votes. Now, how do I know this? How can I say this so confidently? Because I come from a white little town in North Carolina where I learned white supremacy. Racism is so casual where I'm from, it's culture. I'll say it again, racism is so casual, it's culture. And that culture breeds the next generation of white supremacists. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about that cycle of white supremacy that has yet to be broken. I want to talk about the silent complicity of white America whenever white supremacy is challenged. I want to talk about the ignorance of white America as it pertains to identifying and stopping white supremacy. Because you see, white supremacy is the single most dangerous thing in America to anybody who doesn't look like me. But every time white supremacy rears its ugly head, we treat it like it's a new dog doing new tricks. No, it's the same dog, same trick. And I'm here to tell you that if we don't change how we treat the dog, it's going to keep doing the same trick. It's going to keep biting. I was raised in the mountains of western North Carolina in a white little neck of the woods, often referred to as a holler. I grew up with the Confederate flag in my front yard, and my neighbor had one in his, and this neighbor in his, and the guy down the road, everywhere. That flag was a sign of our heritage. At least that's what I was told. What heritage, might you ask? A heritage of simple, hard-working Christian folk. Patriots who love their country and their neighbor. As long as your neighbor looks like you. Because I'm here to tell you, I didn't have any black neighbors. In fact, you had to go about 20, 30 minutes down the road before you got to the black neighborhood, or where I'm from, they refer to as the bad part of town. You see, racism, where I'm from, is so casual, it's hidden in plain sight. I didn't know it existed. The N-word was daily vocabulary. I didn't even know that was a bad word. Growing up, I learned that People who sag their pants are thugs. Growing up, I learned if you live in government-assisted housing, it's because you're too lazy to get a job. Work hard like us. Growing up, I learned that these people get food stamps and sell drugs. You see, one day my dad was going on a rant about just that when a guy knocked at my door. So I went and let him in. The guy went and sat with my dad, handed my dad some money. My dad weighed out the right amount of marijuana and gave it back to him. You know, a drug deal. And then my dad took the money from that drug deal and he put it in his wallet. Right next to some red, yellow, blue, green food coupons. You may have heard of them, they're called food stamps. Did my dad see the hypocrisy of us having food stamps and selling drugs while he's telling me about these people getting food stamps and selling drugs? No. Because my dad would explain it like this: son, I work hard and I pay taxes. So I deserve these food stamps. And I don't make enough money and I want to provide for you children, so I got to sell these drugs to make ends meet. You see the hypocrisy of that. The cognitive dissonance is cringeworthy. How could my dad, an otherwise intelligent man, be so ignorant? All of this is a reality in this country, made possible by my white ancestors creating a white system that benefits me. Now, it is worth noting that we've made great progress in the area of civil rights, thanks to countless black liberation movements, countless social liberation movements. But racism and white supremacy still very much exist.
Racism and white supremacy still very much exist.
In an annual parade that filled Red Square with military hardware and dozens of foreign leaders, Vladimir Putin once again tied Russia's past triumphs to today's war in Ukraine, and he also further tied Russia's fate to that of China. Here's Nick Schifrin.
In Moscow today, pomp, pageantry, patriotism, a show of force, from the intercontinental missile carriers of the Cold War to the drones of the Ukraine war. Vladimir Putin's Russia ties what many Russians consider their finest moment, victory over Germany, to today's confrontation with the West. And on display today, what Moscow considers a new world order. An alliance of autocracies led by the leaders of China and Russia, with the help of North Korea. And nearly 30 visiting leaders to help Putin weaponize the past to justify the present.
Russia has been and will continue to be an indestructible wall against Nazism, Russophobia, and anti-Semitism. Truth and justice are on our side. Our whole country, society, and people support the participants of the special military operation.
But left unsaid today, Russia's vulnerabilities to the war in Ukraine. The internet here was jammed, and the stage where dignitaries sat reportedly fitted with a roof to stop drones. Yesterday, Putin and Xi Jinping further cemented what they call their no-limits partnership. They released a joint statement pledging to, quote, decisively counter Washington's dual containment of Russia and China and demanding a Ukraine settlement, quote, eliminate its root causes, which they mutually defined as Western alliances.
In the face of the countercurrent of unilateralism and the active power politics and bullying in the world, China will join Russia in shouldering a special responsibility and promote an equal and orderly multipolar world.
And that just shows that they're standing back to back and supporting each other in this order that used to be an America-centered, and now it's increasingly up for grabs.
And victims that were taken advantage of by Epstein and his colleague.
And everyone ditched R. Kelly. Okay, now there's a huge difference though between R. Kelly's fans and friends and Diddy's fans and friends. R. Kelly kept his like grassroots friends, people that he had worked for him. It wasn't celebrities. He didn't branch out and do things because his gift, for lack of better words, was singing. Where P. Diddy surrounded himself always with the best of the best, the actors who are the best actors, the elite I don't even have to go into all the people that he's named. And there is a video on YouTube and it's on every social media where Diddy names off all these people, okay? And at the time, which was prior to his arrest, I'm not sure that the world really knew what that was about, right? At the end of it, he says something to the effect of, you know, all these people knew they had a responsibility to me to call me and take my calls back in around Easter, he claims, because and that was posted around that time, 6 months about before he got arrested. If I'm going down, y'all going down with me, okay? What that is, and I've talked about this with R. Kelly, okay? He is saying, listen, guys, none of y'all are calling me back. None of y'all are listening. None of y'all want to talk to me now. Well, guess what? I'm going down and that's fine, but you're going to go down with me. And it's just so, it's fascinating to watch it, not know what it is, and then all of a sudden we can kind of put the pieces together. So originally I would say to you, I wouldn't think that Diddy would snitch. The old saying, you know, snitches end up in ditches, right? And it's not looked at as a cool thing. However, after speaking to a number of people in the game, for lack of better words, when you're a music mogul, right, and you, lack of better words, snitch, okay, it's not the same as when the gangsters were snitching, okay? Gangsters snitched, and that person ends up dead. That's how it works. But these are worlds of not gangsters with R. Kelly or with P. Diddy. These are a lot of them are sophisticated individuals. So if he flips, it's not like there's going to be a hit out on him. So it's just a very different world. And I would say that it is very possible when Diddy recognizes that they have as much information as they do, which he's not going to even know it all for quite some time, he may be trying to figure out, hey, I give you this info, what's that going to do for me?
On February 7th, President Trump signed this executive order carving out an exception for the Afrikaners, the white minority who created the racist apartheid regime in South Africa and ruled there cruelly and brutally until 1994.
The white minority who created the racist apartheid regime in South Africa and ruled there cruelly and brutally until 1994.
Black South Africans, the overwhelming majority of South Africans, were allowed to vote for the first time, and they voted for that man, Nelson Mandela. Afrikaners took land from black people in South Africa, repressed them, and in the 3 decades since the end of apartheid, they still have all the land they took. Black South Africans, who make up over 80% of the population, still only own around 4% of private land.
Apartheid, they still have all the land they took. Black South Africans, who make up over 80% of the population, still only own around 4% of private land.
The idea that there's a genocide of white farmers going on in South Africa is just not true. It's absurd, and that's been debunked by a number of organizations, both inside and outside of South Africa. But it's become a rallying cry for some right-wing elements inside the country, and has echoed all the way to America. Let me just go back to Sudan for a moment. An actual genocide has happened there, according to the U.S., as 2 warring factions battled for control of that country earlier this year. The U.S. accused one side, the RSF, of committing genocide. More than 11 million people have been internally displaced, while millions more have fled the country. That's according to the UN. They aren't allowed to be refugees here. And on top of this, the Afghans who worked alongside U.S. troops during the war as interpreters and guides and fixers, Afghans who fought for the United States, helped save American lives, and were allowed here under a temporary protected status. Well, now we learn that status is not going to be renewed next week, according to the Department of Homeland Security.
We have raised our own concern because those people who are being enticed to go to the United States do not fit the definition of a refugee. A refugee is someone who has to leave their country out of fear of political persecution, religious persecution. They don't fit that bill. They don't fit that description. And I had a conversation with President Trump on the phone, and he said, what's happening down there? And I said, President, what you've been told by those people who are opposed to transformation back home in South Africa is not true. And I added to him, I said, we were well taught by Nelson Mandela and other iconic leaders like Oliver Tambo on how to continue to build a united nation out of the diverse groupings that we have in South Africa. We're the only country on the continent where the colonizers came to stay, and we have never driven them out of our country. So they are staying, and they're making great progress.
We're the only country on the continent where the colonizers came to stay.